Hello and welcome to episode number 187. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com. Nice to have you with us. Let's be honest with each other here. Last week, when you finished your project status report, how did you distribute it to the intended audience? You sent it as an attachment to an email, right? Well, that is so Internet 1.0. Our interview guest today is Dennis Brook, whose passion it is to help you adopt Enterprise 2.0 project management tools and move you into the 21st century. This episode is sponsored by nobody. But I can tell you that later on this year, it will be sponsored by the 2011 Project World and World Congress for Business Analysts. And I can also tell you that we will be able to offer you a 20% discount coupon, as well as one complimentary pass that we will be giving away. The event is 5 months away, so just keep listening. Dennis Brook is a senior program manager for a small but important division for GE Aviation. He has managed successful projects from Seattle to Sydney and confesses to being at the helm of at least one clunker. He's been using web-based project management communication tools since the late 90s and speaks and writes on the topic. At his website, dennisbrook.com, you can read stories about life, business, and even project management. And now, would you please close Facebook and pay attention? Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview.
Today with Dennis Brook, program manager and speaker. Hello, Dennis. Welcome to the Project Management Podcast.
Hey, great to be on the program.
You recently gave a presentation titled The New Collaboration for Project Management Success, Enterprise 2.0, for the Puget Sound PMI chapter. Let's begin at the beginning. What is Enterprise 2.0 in your view?
Okay, well, Enterprise 2.0 is really what we call Web 2.0 used for business. And the original internet, what they call Web 1.0, is basically one-way communications. But Web 2.0, it's collaboration, it's two-way communications. And I mean, it's really a significant leap forward. And when you think of Web 2.0, you think of social media, but Enterprise 2.0 is that collaborative software internet base that's used for business purposes.
What got you interested in this?
Well, I actually got into this before the internet was really big, back in the late 90s. And I was working at a tax software company as a project manager, and I got kind of annoyed at how people would ask for the same status report. And it was going out by email, and people would say, hey, can you send me that again? Or can you send me this document again? And I had a really smart intern who said, hey, look, I can set up a company intranet site and we can have a portal for our project. And so we can post status reports, schedules, specs, and all that type of thing. So instead of people having to come back to me time and time again for the same report that I'd sent them before, they had a one-stop shop for it. So that's really how I got started in it.
Right. And why should our listeners be interested in our conversation here? What's the hook for them?
Well, the bottom line is, I mean, people who are in project management or in business understand that successful projects, successful businesses are really based around communications. And if I'm just sending stuff out and it's to a small audience, it's typically one-way communications. There's a little bit of collaboration. But Enterprise 2.0 really opens up the door for collaboration on a much higher level, and it really opens up the communication. So successful projects are about communications. Enterprise 2.0 is all about communications.
What is the most common electronic form of communication that we use in projects today?
Well, when I ask that question at seminars, people go, oh, it's Microsoft Project or it's Excel. But the answer is email. I mean, and email is good for sporadic communications. But the problem with email is I'm having to dig through it and manage it and say, okay, where's the latest status on this? And
Right, it's not Enterprise 2.0, right?
Right.
It's one-way communication only.
Exactly. And so, I mean, you have to manage the email, file things, and Enterprise 2.0 puts it in a format where I can always go find what I need.
Right, but you have to know where to find it, right?
Right. And I mean, that's part of the cultural change in making a change from email to Enterprise 2.0 is you have to teach people how to find it, put it in a format that's easy to find and read, and then work with them to make sure that it becomes their new standard instead of email.
Okay. So what are the advantages of Enterprise 2.0 over the other methods of communications that we've used in the past?
Well, we kind of touched on a little bit of this, but really to sum it up, it's about visibility, it's about interactivity, and it's about locatability. And visibility, every project that I've had that's been successful, it's been good communications between the team, the sponsor, and the stakeholders. And Enterprise 2.0 lets us put stuff in a place where people can find it. The other thing is the locatability. We talk about email. I used to work in enterprise content management software business, and one of the big selling points of that software is you typically spend 2 hours a day trying to find stuff. And if you're using Enterprise 2.0, it's much easier to find. You could save an hour that day pretty easily. And then the last thing that I like to talk about is interactivity. I can post a draft scope document, ask people to comment on it, and instead of circulating email, what they're doing is they're going in there, they're making their comments, they're seeing what other people saw, and it helps flesh it out. So it's like sitting around in a room, but you're able to do it on your own time, and everyone gets to get their say without having to compete with everyone else.
Right. I'm looking at the presentation slides that you used, and we're going to make those available to the listeners as a PDF document here. And you also have a few disadvantages listed here. And they are limited formatting, content quality, the barrage of information, and the potential for abuse. Can you talk a little bit about those four as well?
Sure. Limited. I'm a power Microsoft Word user, not just because I'm from Seattle, but I really like the power. I like the power of Microsoft Word. And so I like to use a lot of tables and sorting and things like that. And if you're using a wiki, you don't have all the formatting tools that you do. But if you really need a well-formatted document, you can link it through a wiki or another format. So you do give up some formatting issues with that you have great formatting with things like Microsoft Word, but if you're using Enterprise 2.0, wikis and that aren't always so well or easy to use. What were the other ones?
The content quality.
Content quality can be a weakness too, because one of the things about Enterprise 2.0 is it's interactive and open. And when you have everyone putting in content, sometimes it's not so good. The thing is you have to give up some control to get people to participate. And so what I'll do is if I have someone who's not putting in great content, I might establish some guidelines, not rules, but guidelines. And then what I'll also do is I'll work with them and say, hey, if you want to get your point across, here's a good way to communicate. And so work with people to bring their game up so that they've improved their content quality.
Mm-hmm. The next one, and I really like this one, the way it's formulated, the barrage of information. That's so obvious. It's information overload that we get today. So it's the same with Enterprise 2.0, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the good thing about it is you can format it at the right level for the right audience. And when I interview people, I talk to them. I say, so how do you communicate differently to different groups? And the key thing is when you're talking with a sponsor, an executive level sponsor, they have, seconds. You only have a few seconds of their time, maybe a couple of minutes. When you're talking to a programmer or a developer or someone like that, they want to get down into the weeds. With Enterprise 2.0, you can create portals that have the summary. And in fact, what I like to do is I use the project charter as my portal. And from there, I can drill down into things like a schedule, status reports, and things like that. So there's all kinds of information. There's a huge barrage of information. But unlike email, you can format it so that it's easy to use.
Mm-hmm. And the last disadvantage you list here is the potential for abuse. What do you mean by that?
Well, because it's an open Wild West, people can come in there and say things that they really shouldn't. And it's a matter of training people to understand that just like with email, what you put out there is out there forever, and you want to be responsible and be professional before you post something.
Right. Okay, so we've looked at these benefits and the disadvantages, interactivity, easy to find, the visibility you have on the one side, a limited formatting, quality, the barrage of information. Are the benefits that we get really so compelling that there is a clear need for us to switch over from, here is the status report via email to, well, let's throw it up on the intranet?
Yeah, that is a great question, and at first it may not seem so, but when you go in and analyze it and pay attention, you'll realize that you're saving a significant amount of time in that you're not having to send out things again if people aren't having to find it and look for it. And then the other thing is you can put it in a way that it communicates easier. Like we talked about the idea of a portal that lets people drill into the information they need. And like I said before, project success is really about communications. And Enterprise 2.0 is about communications. And that's the way to sell it to people, sell it to executives, is better communications, easier to find things. You save a lot of time there. And that really adds up to a compelling benefit for it. And that's why I switch and encourage people to switch.
All right, let's move on to the actual uses of this. What are some of the common uses that you have seen? And would you also, explain how exactly you would use these in Enterprise 2.0?
Sure. One of the things that I like to do is when I'm starting a project, I want to start with a set of templates. I want to start with a standard project charter template. I want to start with a standard risk register. And in a lot of companies, that information is available, say, on an intranet, or you ask one of the senior project managers, hey, what are you using, or what did you use on the last project? Well, when you do that, it doesn't really involve. So if you put a template for a project charter up on a wiki, you let people go in and check that out and use it. You start from a common set. The other thing is by putting it on Enterprise 2.0 type format, then people can go in and make changes and tweaks to the template itself, and you don't lose those in documents that are just circulated. So it's visible, it's easy to change. And another good idea that we're using at my company is checklists. So I have a checklist about what are the standard things that I need to do in a project. I can put that up as a template or put it on my project so that as I go through specific steps of the project, I can make sure that I'm doing the right thing. I've had a kickoff meeting, I've created a project charter, and then at the end, I've done my closeout. One of the great things for a project for Enterprise 2.0 is the use of a dashboard like I talked about before, because you want to communicate with people at all levels. So a sponsor and everyone in the project should be able to go into a dashboard and see what they want to see and then drill down into the detail they need. So you communicate with people where they want to be and what they need to know.
When it comes to Enterprise 2.0, I constantly work online. In our company, we have templates, checklists, dashboards online. And that's mainly because the team here at the Project Management Podcast, we are distributed throughout all the world. I'm in the United States, some people are in the Philippines, others are in Pakistan, and we have other people who are in Europe and in the United States, so we're all over. So we're used to that. What I've heard you say in the beginning is that first there seems to be a technological hurdle. You have to have the infrastructure internally to build this. But then everything else I think that we've heard from you is it is a mindset and a culture change. Do you find that these days this is here, the mindset change is here, people are willing to accept that, Enterprise 2.0 is here to stay and we have to go online and we have to share our project documents in this way?
Yeah, that's a great point. And what you find is that the younger generation is already used to this. They're using Facebook, they may have blogs, and they're using all kinds of online tools. So for them, it's a natural. And people who aren't used to it, once they get used to it, they see the benefit and they use it, but you have to get them over that hurdle.
Right.
And you touched on something very important too, is, we are a worldwide economy. Even my small company, we have people in China, we have people down in South America and Australia. And this is a great way to communicate, not just with the people in the building, but with the people outside the building.
Mm-hmm. You started out with templates and checklists. Those are the first things that people usually use, like a template for, I don't know, an agenda for a meeting, or like you said, the project charter. But at some point, these get turned into real project documents. I know this is an obvious answer to this question, but where do those documents go, the final versions of these documents?
Yeah, so great question. Once you have a signed off document, maybe a scanned document or PDF, then you need to save those artifacts so that you can go back and reference those. And that's a great thing about Enterprise 2.0 is you can use it, save it as part of a wiki, you can save it as part of a document management system and link to it through your project dashboard. But when you have a signed off, set in stone, as much as it can be set in stone in our industry, artifact, then you want to store that in a place that's easy to reference.
All right. So much for our brief overview here over what Enterprise 2.0 is, some discussion of some of the tools here. But before I let you go, let's give some recommendations here to our listeners, because not every company has a strategy that outlines how these kind of tools can be used on a project. So what's your recommendation here for our listeners? Do you have one or two ideas for them how they can implement something like this tomorrow, how they can get started, how they can get over the initial resistance that they may find at their place of work?
Yeah, so a lot of it does depend on having the technology. But what I like to do is start small. And if you can get with your IT department and say, we'd like to use a blog for a project, for example, the software to use for blog, you can download and install behind the firewall. And a blog is a good way to get people to start communicating, start sharing information that is accessible to not only the whole company, but to the project team. The other thing that you can do is you can actually use it outside the company and demonstrate it to people. For example, if you're working, say, on a project management institute, if you're a volunteer with PMI, or if you're working, say, with a local church or a scout troop, you can use free tools like Wet Paint, which is a type of wiki, and you can use that to go ahead and manage projects. And then bring that back to your company and say, look, this is how I'm using it outside. We need to be using this inside. But if you can get your IT group to support you, a lot of the software, free wiki software, free blog software, you can download within your firewall, get it installed, and start using it tomorrow. Start small, take baby steps, and then move up.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dennis. You have whet my appetite here. I'm really looking forward to our second interview on this topic, when we're going to jump into the project management specifics and look more at how do you use these tools, how do you implement them on your day-to-day project management job. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Great. Hope your listeners get a lot out of it. It's been great for me, and it's a great tool. It's a great suite to help people do their job.
And that was Dennis Brook on Enterprise 2.0. But do keep listening all the way to the end, where you can hear one more question that I had for him. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. If you are preparing for your PMP exam, then the best way to calm the butterflies in your stomach is to take a practice exam. Our PMP exam simulator offers you 9 such practice exams. To see how it works and to take a free test drive, please go to freeexamsimulator.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com, and when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. No project would ever be attempted if all possible objections must first be overcome. Until next time. Dennis, before I let you go, I have one more question here. At the end of our conversation, I feel that for me, because I'm using these tools, it's kind of like, duh, of course you need to use these Enterprise 2.0 tools. Of course, this is the way we work today. How is it for you when you give your presentation, when you talk to people about this? Is this eye-opening, or is this something that everyone says, yeah, I already knew about this. This is how we already do our work?
That brings up a good story, because when I talked about this to the Project Management Institute back in Seattle, I gave this talk and I went about how you use it, what it is, what is Enterprise 2.0. And one of my friends was sitting at one of the tables, and these two women look at each other and they say, "Where do you buy this Enterprise 2.0 software?" Like it was just a CD you get on the shelf. And so some people are just totally new to it. And then other people were critical because they said, well, you didn't go into enough detail. When I talk about it, I try not to go into the specific software, because I'm not trying to sell the software. I'm trying to sell the concept because it's so good. And there are all kinds of tools that do it. But yes, some people look at it and they go, how does this work? And then other people go, well, duh, you should be using it because it's such a significant improvement in communication.